This section's A2.2, which is about cell structures. The first thing that we're going to do is look at the guiding questions here. What are the features common to all cells and what features are different? And how is microscopy used to investigate cell structures? On this video, we're going to focus mostly on the cell theory, okay? Knowing that cells are the basic unit of living organisms. And of course, we're going to look at what are the atypical cells that do not follow the true of the cell theory. So these are the two focus we're going to be working on. So by the end of this video, you'll be able to outline the cell theory and describe its structures and what are the atypicals part of it. And of course, give some examples of those atypical cells. So with that, let's first understand what is cytology. Cytology here is basically the study of cell. Whenever you see the word cyto, think of cells, and the word logy means the study of. So it's very important that we understand one thing, that not every cells are going to be exactly the same shape. So if you look at right here, you have three pictures here. None of them are the same, and all of them are different cells. This is a permencyeum. This is a nerve cell. This is a plant cell. Can you see that there's so many different types of cells in the world? They're not all circles. Of course, also, we have to understand that not everybody will think here that the big animals have big cells and the small to tiny animals have tiny cells. That's not how it works. So for example, if you have an elephant, obviously, do not make fun of my drawing. This is the elephant right here. And you have the little ant, whatever it is. You're going to think, oh, the little ant has smaller cells than the elephant. No, it's not true. It's just that the ant has a little bit less, I think a lot, right? A lot less of numbers of cells compared to the elephant. The elephant will have much more higher numbers of cells. It's not that they have bigger cells. It's just that they have extra numbers of cells. That's the difference. So keep that in mind about cytology, and keep that in mind throughout the rest of the contents in this IB bio, that not every cells have to look the same. Not every cells have to be bigger just because they are in bigger organisms. So with mine, let's learn the three theories of cell. Now, these three theories are just the three theories that you have to know, because there's so many other theories about the cells, but these are the three main ones that you have to know really well by wording. So the first one is that all living things have cells, and the cell is the smallest function unit of all the livings, and of course, all the cells come from pre-existing life. Cells, all of these are part that agreement of all the scientists all together. Now, we can understand how they came up with those three sentences, how they worked. So the first one, let's talk about, how all the living things come from the cell. This all started basically with scientists using microscope. And when they look at the microscope, you can see here in the picture, they were looking and seeing that, hey, animals and plants, we put their tissues in the microscope and they look like living cells. So it was all based on the microscope right here, that he checked it out, and the microscope, they checked in there and they noticed, oh, animals have cells in there. And then they checked the plants, they put species in there and they found cells. So they decided, oh, that means all living things have cells. That's how they got it. Everything through a microscope. The second part, obviously, they wanted to say that all the cells are the smallest functional unit of life. What does that mean? Well, it's just basically, again, that the tiniest you can get in which they're still functioning. So how did this work? This worked through a microscope. So they had a microscope here again. Once again, the microscope saving the day. And what it does is it put a cell under the microscope. Great. The cell is working, functioning very well. So it says, okay, it's working. Now they took off the cell, and instead of putting the cell, they decided, you know what? I am actually going to take a piece of the cell. Let's say I'm going to take out of it this smooth ER. So it's one piece inside of the cell, and they decided to put that little guy here. It wasn't functioning. Oh, and let's take the ribosome and put it here. It wasn't functioning. So he was picking pieces by pieces out of the cell to see if they function by themselves, and it wasn't functioning. That's when they decided, hey, the smallest you can get, the tiny little size they can get, that is still functioning as a unit, it's a cell. Because, again, there's pieces inside the cell, they work together as one, and they make sure that the cell is working. So that's the smallest you can get. But all of this was based using a microscope. Then we get to the last part, which cells come from pre-existing cells. How does that work? Well, back then there was this theory about spontaneously generation, which they believe that things just pop out of the blue in the air. Like, for example, here they see this meat with the mosquito. They thought that out of the blue, magically, the mosquito always shows up out of the blue from the meat. Spontaneous generation. But that's not how it works. Why? There is one specific scientist known as Louis Pasteur. This guy, he made an experiment with chicken broth and flask and heating up and sterilized them, and he was able to prove that that spontaneous generation, that things just pop out of nowhere, are actually wrong. So what did he do here that you need to know? Important. He took containers, he took chicken broth, he sterilized these containers, and eventually, in one moment that he opened one of them and the other one sealing, he was able to prove it. So I'm going to show you the experiment so you can understand if you have to explain this in an IB exam. So right here, what do we have? We have a chicken broth that has been heated up, right? So when you heat it, what happens? It's sterilized. And the word sterilized, that means it's pure. There's no microbes in there. But when he waited for, let's say, 24 hours, he saw that right here, there's a lot of growth of microbes. It's like, wait, but I heated up and it was sterilized. There was no microbes in there and they show up again. So what did he do the next time? Again, he took the broth and heated up, but this time he locked it up. And he noticed, he waited, there was no growth whatsoever. When he took it up and opened it up, again, it started growing all over again. What does that mean? He basically saying, well, when I sterilized this guy and there was nothing that could come in, if you're saying that things just pop out of nowhere, then there should have been microbes in there even if I lock this thing up because it pops out of there. But no, because I open, what is in the air? Microbes, bacteria. They landed and they start reproducing, and that's how you had the growth up. So he kind of proved this by breaking the sealed flask, and that's how he proved. So in another way here to make it more clear. So imagine you have here the flask, and you have the soup right here, and you have some microbes in here. So what's the first thing you do? You heat it up. Great. Now, what happens to this flask? The flask now, it's completely clear of any microbes. Great. You wait for 24 hours, and what happens? Once again, the soup now has a bunch of microbes. Okay? That makes sense. Next, he decided to heat it up. It is closed, but this time he locked this thing up. When he locked this thing up, guess what? Nothing happened. It was completely clear. There was no microbes. But the moment he decided to break that seal, some of the microbes came in and they start to multiply, and voila, it came in. Sometimes you might find in IB that they will show this kind of flask that looks like this. Now, this one is more likely to prove. Why? Because some will say, well, look, you opened to the air again, so it came out of the blue. But in this flask, what happens? The microbes landed right here. And even though it's open to the air, right? It's open to the air. The microbes in here, there was no growth here. This kind of flask makes it more proving that, again, if there was no pre-existing cells, that means that if there wasn't a microbe beforehand, you couldn't have extra microbes. So you really have to be some kind of cell there in order to make new cells coming out. Otherwise, nothing will be there. So Pasteur basically helped reject the spontaneous generation and prove that cells come from pre-existing cells. Now, you have all these other scientists trying to prove, but the whole point here is these guys were using microscope in order to prove that cells were living and to tell that the cell is the smallest function unit. And of course, Pasteur had to use the chicken broth with the flask and the heating system in order to prove that, again, cells come from pre-existing cells. So all good from here. However, there is some exceptions to the cell theory. What does that mean? Some cells, they are unique and they do not follow the rest of the rules. So you do need to know some of these examples. One of them is the striated muscle. Now, what is it about the striated muscles? Well, these guys are multinucleated. What does that mean? The word multi means many. Nucleated means nucleus. So it is presumed that we're saying that every cell has one nucleus, not with the striated muscles. What happened is imagine that you had a bunch of cells coming together like this. Well, let me do a better drawing than this. Let's just say you have all these here. They used to be like this, bunch of cells, and they had their little nucleuses here, okay? Now, of course, for them to work faster, for them to contract faster, for them to contract synchronized, the best method for them was to connect their cells. So when they connected the cells, voila, now you see this long piece of cell with a bunch of nucleus. And that's what striated muscles are. They're an exception. They don't say that one nucleus per cell. This is a bunch of nucleus per cell. So here you can see they're working as an autonomous unit. That means all together as one with their plasma membrane. As you notice, the plasma membrane is all connected to each other. So that is completely separating from what the cell theory is. Another one is we were talking about here is the red blood cells. Now, the red blood cells are the opposite of the striated muscles. It's anucleated. A means no nucleus. They don't have a nucleus, but somehow they're still traveling through your blood and they're still carrying your oxygen. Another example of exception. Then you have the giant algae. Now, we believe, and this is one of the theories, that all the cells are very microscopic, tiny little ones, right? To a point that you can only see them through a microscope. Not with this one. It can go up to 7 centimeters in length. So you can see this one cell that is huge. So it challenges that many microscopic cells that are tiny. No, you can have one cell. And again, if you look at this picture, it's one huge cell that you can see with your own eyes, 7 centimeters. And that's still a cell. So again, cuts away from the exceptions. Another one is the Aseptate fungal Hyphae. What is basically this saying? Basically, think of a tree, and in the tree you have little fungus here, and of course the tree has its own root, but the fungus have even bigger roots that go stretching all the way out. Now, these roots that are stretched so far out, they usually will look, if I do a little bit of a drawing here, they look like they have a section that separates them, and that's known as septate. So it's separating cell by cell by cell by cell. So instead of looking at the line, look at it like a zoom, right? Now, you learn in the septate, it's separating cell by cell. But when it comes to this fungal, it does not have that septate. So it becomes aseptate. A means no septate. So what's happening here is that you are getting rid of it, all of these lines. So in the end, what you have all the cytoplasms connected to each other. So they're not discrete cells. Their cytoplasms are connected by all of these guys' cells. And that's, again, proving once again that it's not one tiny discrete cell, but you can connect many cells and you can connect the cytoplasm of many cells together. And that's what this fungi Hyphae is doing. So, another example is the sieve tube, which is basically part of the phloem. Remember the phloem where the sugar is going up and down in a plant? Well, it also doesn't have a nucleus. So once again, why is it that it doesn't have a nucleus? It's because it wants to give space to allow a lot of transportation, which that means they have little cytoplasm, they barely have any organelles. They're just like a tube with emptiness in there. And that's just to allow things to flow up and down the plant fast without any resistance. Once again, they don't have much organelles. That goes against what we believe the cells have, which have the cytoplasm. And it doesn't have organelles. Again, goes against what we believe the cells have. So this is pretty much it for this video. So you have learned the 3 parts of the cell theory. You have looked at the evidence. We talk about the different types of examples that are against the cell theory, like the striated muscles, the aseptate fungal, the giant algae, the sieve tube, even the hemoglobin. All of these guys right here show you what this video is about. So this is it for this one. On the next one, I'm going to talk about the functions of life. But for now, remember, with NARB, you can get that 7. I'll see you on the next video.